My mom canceled every wedding vendor just 1 week before the ceremony. The flowers, the catering, even the venue were all gone. She even told my fiancé, "My daughter is damaged goods and marrying her will be the worst mistake of your life." On the day of our wedding, about 200 guests showed up expecting a celebration but found an empty lot instead. What my mom didn't know was that my maid of honor had secretly been planning something for the past 6 months. What happened next left my mom completely speechless. My daughter is damaged goods and marrying her will be the worst mistake of your life. Imagine hearing those words, not from some scorned ex or a jealous rival, but from your own mother, just 1 week before your wedding. That, my friends, is the chilling prologue to a story that frankly left me speechless. It's a tale of betrayal so profound it almost defies belief. A mother's calculated sabotage that would unravel not just a wedding, but a lifetime of carefully constructed lies. But what makes this story truly, truly unforgettable isn't just the sheer audacity of the villain, it's the quiet, determined resilience of our protagonist and a secret plan orchestrated by her maid of honor that would leave everyone, especially the mother, utterly dumbfounded. We're about to dive deep into a Reddit post that exposed the raw nerves of a family drama, a masterclass in manipulation, and a jaw-dropping act of love and solidarity. So grab a cup of something warm, because this is going to be a wild ride. Phase 1, the incubation. Our story begins, as many do, long before the dramatic climax. Our protagonist, let's call her Sarah for the sake of clarity, describes her childhood as a complicated, not overtly abusive, she insists, but always fraught with an undercurrent of conditional love. Her mother, a woman Sarah paints as charismatic and outwardly charming, held an iron grip on her daughter's emotional landscape. Everything Sarah did, every choice she made, was filtered through the lens of her mother's approval. And that approval, well, it was a fickle beast. Sarah recounts how, from a young age, she learned to anticipate her mother's moods. A good report card would be met with a fleeting smile, quickly followed by a critique of her handwriting. A successful sports event would earn praise, but then a dismissive comment about not being graceful enough, would then a dismissive comment about not being graceful enough. It was a constant dance, a tightrope walk where the landing was always uncertain. I mean, can you imagine growing up like that, always striving, always falling, just short of the moving target that was your own mother's affection? It's exhausting just thinking about it. This wasn't a sudden descent into madness, no. This was a slow, insidious erosion of self-worth. Sarah, in her post, talks about how she internalized these criticisms, believing that she genuinely wasn't good enough, and that her mother, despite the hurtful remarks, must know best. She believed her mother loved her in her own way, and that these sharp edges were just part of that love, part of who she was, and that, my friends, is a dangerous foundation for any relationship, especially one with a parent. Let's take a moment here for a psychological deep dive. What Sarah describes is a classic example of enmeshment within a family dynamic. This isn't just about a close parent-child bond, it's an unhealthy blurring of boundaries, where individual identities become intertwined. In enmeshed families, a child's thoughts, feelings, and experiences are often dictated by the parent, and there's little room for autonomy. The parent might see their child as an extension of themselves rather than a separate individual. This makes it incredibly difficult for the child to develop a strong sense of self, leading to a constant need for external validation, often from the very person who's causing the enmeshment. Sarah's childhood, colored by her mother's constant critical guidance, perfectly illustrates this. It explains why she was so susceptible to her mother's influence, and why she kept trying to win her affection even when it hurt. As Sarah entered adulthood, this pattern continued. She chose universities, careers, even friendships, with a subtle, subconscious nod to what her mother would approve of. Any deviation was met with passive-aggressive comments, long silences, or the dreaded "I'm just worried about you" delivered with an icy tone that spoke volumes. It was emotional manipulation at its finest, or perhaps its most insidious. You can almost feel the weight of expectation on her shoulders, the constant pressure to perform, to conform. I honestly can't imagine living under that kind of microscope. Then into this carefully constructed, albeit fragile, world step Mark. Mark was everything Sarah's mother wasn't: open, supportive, emotionally intelligent. He saw Sarah, truly saw her, not as an extension of someone else, but as a vibrant, intelligent woman in her own right. Their relationship bloomed quickly, a refreshing oasis in Sarah's emotionally arid life. She described feeling genuinely loved for the first time, free to be herself without fear of judgment. This, of course, presented a problem for her mother. Mark represented a threat to her control, a rival for Sarah's affection and attention. The engagement itself was a point of quiet contention. Sarah's mother offered a lukewarm congratulations, immediately immediately pivoting to how she envisioned the wedding. "Of course you'll have it at the old family estate, darling. It's tradition," she'd say, even though the estate was a crumbling farmhouse 100 miles away that hadn't been suitable for a wedding in decades. Sarah, wanting to keep the peace, tried to gently steer the conversation towards her and Mark's actual vision, a beautiful, intimate ceremony at a local botanical garden, a place they'd always loved, but as we're about to see, that was just the tip of the iceberg of what her mother had in store. Phase 2, the red flags. The planning process, as you might guess, was a minefield. Sarah, eager for her mother's blessing, foolishly, perhaps predictably, included her in every step. And her mother, of course, seized the opportunity. The first red flag, as Sarah recounted, was subtle. They were looking at caterers, and Sarah had found a fantastic local business that specialized in sustainable, farm-to-table cuisine, something she and Mark were passionate about. She excitedly showed her mother the menu. "Oh, darling," her mother said, barely glancing at the brochure. "This looks lovely. For a picnic, perhaps, but for our wedding, we need something more substantial." More impressive, I've already spoken to Gourmet Galler. They cater all the best society events. Their lobster bisque is divine. Sarah felt her heart sink. She tried to assert herself, saying, "Mom, Mark, and I really love the idea of supporting local and keeping it fresh. And honestly, the prices for Gourmet Galore are way out of our budget." Her mother just waved a dismissive hand. "Nonsense. I'll handle the budget. You just focus on looking beautiful." This wasn't an offer of help. It was a unilateral decision, completely sidelining Sarah's wishes. A few weeks later, another incident. Sarah and Mark had found a photographer whose candid artistic style perfectly matched their vision. They loved his portfolio. Her mother, however, had other ideas. "Honestly, dear, his work is a bit moody. Don't you want bright, happy photos? I found a wonderful photographer, Mr. Sterling. He photographed the Debutante Ball in '92. He's a classic." Sarah protested, "Mom, we really connect with... It feels authentic to us." Her mother's response, a sigh so dramatic. Sarah could practically hear the air being sucked out of the room. "Fine, Sarah. It's your wedding. Just don't come crying to me when your photos look like they were shot in a dungeon." And then, a few days later, Sarah found an email in her junk folder, a confirmation from Mr. Sterling for a consultation apparently booked by her mother. Wait, I actually had to read that twice to make sure it was real. The sheer audacity to bypass her own daughter and book something without consent. It's almost comical in its brazenness if it wasn't so utterly infuriating. This brings us to our next psychological deep dive. Gaslighting, what Sarah's mother was doing. Dismissing her feelings, undermining her choices, making her doubt her own perceptions. "No, come crying to me." And then subtly, or not so subtly, taking over is textbook gaslighting. It's a form of psychological manipulation where a person makes another question their own memory, perception, or sanity. The goal is to sow seeds of doubt, to make the victim dependent on the manipulator for their sense of reality. Sarah's mother wasn't just being difficult. She was actively trying to destabilize Sarah's confidence in her own judgment. NT reinforcing the old pattern of mom knows best. It's a cruel tactic that strips away a person's autonomy, leaving them confused and vulnerable. The red flags kept coming, the guest list, for instance. Sarah and Mark wanted a relatively intimate wedding, around 100 people, mostly close family and friends. Her mother, however, insisted on inviting a slew of distant relatives, business acquaintances, and old family friends Sarah barely knew. "Darling, it's about appearances. You can't possibly exclude Aunt Carol's bridge club." They be mortified. Sarah found her mother had added another 50 names to the list, many of whom Sarah couldn't even place. When confronted, her mother would say, "I'm just trying to help you have the wedding you deserve, sweetie. You're so busy with work, I thought I'd take some of the burden off your shoulders." It was always couched in terms of help or love, which made it so much harder for Sarah to push back the venue. This was a battleground. Sarah and Mark had chosen a stunning botanical garden with a beautiful reception hall. It was elegant, green, and felt like them. Her mother, predictably, hated it. Too rustic, too common. A wedding of your standing needs something grander. A ballroom, a country club, I know the perfect place, the Grand Regency, they have an opening for your date. Sarah tried to explain that the Grand Regency was way too expensive and not at all what they wanted. "Mom, please. We love the garden. It's us." Her mother's reply was curt. "You'll thank me later." Trust me, the implication was clear. Her choices were superior and Sarah's were naive. I mean, if I were in their shoes, I'd have walked away right then, or at least put my foot down so hard the earth would shake. But Sarah, conditioned by years of this manipulative dance, kept trying to find a compromise to appease her mother, to avoid I am flicked. She was stuck in a loop, hoping that if she just explained herself better or gave in on one more thing, her mother would finally come around and be the supportive parent she desperately craved. This speaks to a deeper psychological trap. Let's interject with another psychological deep dive, the sunk cost fallacy. Sarah had invested years, decades even, of emotional energy into her relationship with her mother, constantly trying to earn her love and approval. Despite mounting evidence that her efforts were futile or even detrimental, she continued to invest, perhaps unconsciously, because she had already put so much into it. The idea of abandoning that investment, of admitting it was a lost cause, can be incredibly painful and difficult. So she kept trying, kept compromising, believing that one more effort, one more concession would finally pay off. It's like pouring money into a failing business simply because you've already spent so much. The previous investment shouldn't dictate future choices, but often it does. For Sarah, the cost was her own emotional well-being and her wedding vision. Every conversation became a negotiation, every decision a power struggle. Sarah's attempts to stand firm were met with emotional blackmail. I'm just trying to help you and you're treating me like a monster, or after everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me. Mark, bless his heart, tried to shield Sarah, suggesting they elope or have a smaller, mother-free ceremony. But Sarah, still clinging to the hope of a picture-perfect mother-approved wedding, resisted. She truly wanted her mother there, truly wanted her to be happy for her. That's the tragic irony of it all. This desire for normalcy, for a loving parental presence, made her incredibly vulnerable to the very person destroying her dreams. Phase 3, the catalyst, the wedding. G was 1 week away. Sarah was buzzing with nervous excitement despite the constant low hum of anxiety her mother generated. The last minute details were being finalized. The flowers were ordered, the catering confirmed, the botanical garden prepped for their special day. Or so Sarah thought. It started subtly. A call from the florist asking about a change of order. Sarah was confused. What change? She asked. The florist, sounding apologetic, said, "Oh, your mother called a few days ago, said you wanted to switch from the peonies and hydrangeas to..." Well, she requested a very specific arrangement of blood red roses and black calla lilies. She paid the difference too and said you wanted them delivered to her house for a pre-wedding photo shoot. Sarah felt a cold dread creep up her spine. Blood red roses and black calla lilies. For her joyful spring wedding, it was something out of a gothic novel, and delivered to her mother's house. This wasn't just a change of order. This was go. This was sabotage. She called her mother, her voice trembling. "Mom, what did you do with the flowers?" Her mother's voice was sweet, almost sickeningly so. "Oh, darling, I just thought the peonies were a bit childish, and the black lilies are so chic. And I simply wanted to surprise you with them before the big day as a little gift." Sarah felt a surge of anger, but also confusion. Why would she do this? Then came the call from the catering company. Miss Simply, why would she do this? Then came the call from the catering company. If you're getting views, Sarah's stomach dropped. The catering manager explained that her mother had called, canceled the contract, and even paid the cancellation fee, insisting that Sarah had found a much better Michelin-starred chef. Sarah was aghast. The cat, airing the food they had painstakingly chosen, the vendor they loved, all gone. Just like that. But it got worse. The absolute gut punch came from the botanical garden. Their dream venue. The coordinator sounded genuinely upset when she called. "Sarah, I'm so incredibly sorry, but your mother called us last Thursday. She said you decided to move the wedding to the Grand Regency, and she canceled your booking here. She even left a message saying you wanted to leave a bad review because the garden wasn't up to par." The coordinator sounded heartbroken, almost betrayed. Sarah didn't just feel angry, she felt a profound, chilling sense of violation. This wasn't just a mother trying to control. This was a deliberate act of destruction. Every aspect of her carefully planned wedding, every dream she and Mark shared for their special day, had been systematically dismantled by the one person who should have been celebrating with her. It was a slow-motion car crash playing out in real time. She tried to call her mother, but the calls went straight to voicemail. Then, a text message pinged. From her mother, it read, "Just wanted to make sure everything was handled, sweetie. You sounded so stressed last time we spoke. Now you can relax and focus on being a beautiful bride. Love you." The sheer audacity, the calculated cruelty of it all. This wasn't a mistake, it was an execution. Sarah sat there, tears streaming down her face, clutching her phone. Everything was gone. The flowers, the food, the venue was gone. The flowers, the food, the venue. 1 week before her wedding, she had never felt so utterly helpless, so completely devastated. Mark found her curled up on the couch, shaking. When she finally managed to choke out what had happened, he was speechless. His face went from confusion to utter fury. He knew then, truly knew, the depth of her mother's manipulative tendencies. This wasn't just about wedding plan. It was about breaking Sarah, about asserting absolute control, and then came a final, brutal blow. A phone call to Mark's cell phone, directly from Sarah's mother. Mark put it on speaker, Sarah listening, numb with shock. Her mother's voice, devoid of warmth, dripping with venom. "Mark, I just want to tell you one last time, my daughter is damaged goods, and marrying her her will be the worst mistake of your life. You have no idea what you're getting into. She hung up before Mark could even respond. Let that sink in for a second. An hour before their wedding was supposed to take place, the person who was supposed to love and support her most tried to shatter her life completely. That phone call, I think, was the final severance of any lingering hope Sarah had for a relationship with her mother. It moved beyond control into pure, unadulterated malice. Phase 4. The investigation/escalation. Mark, bless his steady heart, was livid, but also incredibly pragmatic. He held Sarah tightly, letting her cry, and then his jaw set, he sprang into action. We need to find out exactly what she did, he stated, his voice calm despite the fury in his eyes. Sarah, still reeling, could only nod. This is where our detective hats come on, folks, because what happened next was a meticulous piecing together of a web of deceit. They started calling every vendor. The florist confirmed her mother had canceled the original order and placed the grotesque new one, paying with her own credit card. She said you'd had a change of heart and wanted a dramatic new aesthetic. The florist explained, clearly uncomfortable. The catering company likewise confirmed the cancellation and the story about finding a Michelin-starred chef. The botanical garden coordinator was still fuming about the bad review threat. This wasn't just a mother interfering. This was a campaign of calculated destruction veiled under flimsy excuses. But it didn't stop there. Sarah remembered her mother's repeated attempts to steer them towards the Grand Regency. Mark, on a hunch, called the Grand Regency. And sure enough, her mother had inquired about their availability specifically for Sarah and Mark's original wedding date and had been informed they were fully booked. This meant she knew the botanical garden was their only option. Her mother had deliberately created a scenario where there would be no venue, no catering, no flowers, just 1 week before the wedding. It was a complete and utter scorched earth policy. This brings us to a crucial psychological deep dive. The traits Sarah's mother exhibited: a grandiose sense of self-importance, a lack of empathy, a constant need for admiration, and a willingness to exploit others to achieve her goals, strongly aligned with aspects of narcissistic personality disorder, NPD. A person with NPD often views their children as extensions of themselves, and any move towards independence or individual happiness can be seen as a personal affront. The mother sabotage wasn't about helping Sarah. It was about maintaining control, about punishing Sarah for daring to build a life independent of her influence, and about ensuring all attention remained on her point. The lie about the Michelin-starred chef and the bad review threat are classic tactics, manipulating perceptions and damaging reputations to achieve a desired outcome, all while maintaining an image of being helpful or victimized. As Sarah and Mark were trying to wrap their heads around the sheer scale of the devastation, a faint glimmer of hope emerged. Sarah remembered a conversation with her maid of honor, Chloe, a few months prior. Chloe had seemed unusually interested in the wedding plans, asking very specific questions about vendors' guests, tea lists, and even Sarah's mother's involvement. At the time, Sarah had just thought Chloe was being a super supportive Mo. Now a thought sparked. Sarah called Chloe, her voice still thick with tears, explaining everything. Chloe listened silently, her usual bubbly demeanor replaced with a steely resolve. Sarah, Chloe said, her voice surprisingly calm, I need you to tell me everything. Every single detail about what your mom did, every vendor, every cancellation, every lie. Don't leave anything out. Sarah poured out the whole story, the full, ugly truth. When she finished, there was a long pause. Then Chloe spoke again, her voice now brimming with quiet confidence. Okay, listen carefully, because this is gonna sound crazy. Your wedding is still happening, not at the botanical garden, no, but it is happening. Sarah was dumbfounded. Chloe, what are you talking about? Everything's gone. Chloe chuckled softly. Remember when I asked you all those questions? And how your mom seemed extra interested in all the plans? Sarah nodded, confused. Well, Chloe continued, I had a feeling, a really bad feeling. So for the past 6 months, I've been putting together a contingency plan, a backup wedding just in case. Sarah could barely breathe. A backup wedding just in case. Sarah could barely breathe. A backup wedding for 6 months. Chloe explained, I saw the way your mom was. Sarah, I saw the comments, the undermining, the way she made you second guess yourself. I knew deep down that she was capable of something like this. So every time you mentioned a vendor, I looked into similar ones. Every time you talked about your dream venue, I scouted alternatives. I even started saving up my own money and convinced some of our bridesmaids to chip in to secure some deposits on a just-in-case scenario. I found a beautiful little community garden with a small hall, booked it provisionally, and found a wonderful small caterer and florist who were willing to be flexible. Chloe had even put a clause in the contracts that if the primary wedding didn't fall through, they'd be compensated for their time, but if it did, they were ready to go. She'd been keeping track of all the guests too. I have a new guest list for a smaller, more intimate ceremony, but I've also been sending out discreet save the date reminders to everyone just in case. It was an astonishing revelation, a secret parallel wedding operation running quietly in the background, entirely unknown to Sarah. It was a testament to Chloe's unwavering friendship and foresight. The initial shock gave way to a surge of emotion, relief, gratitude, and a renewed sense of hope. Chloe then dropped another bombshell. And about your mother, I think we need to make sure she's there, and that she sees everything. But the gears in Mark's mind started turning. A plan began to form, a poetic, justice-filled resolution that would leave Sarah's mother utterly speechless. The escalation had reached its peak, and now the stage was set for a dramatic confrontation. Phase 5. The fallout and resolution the wedding day arrived. Sarah, thanks to Chloe's incredible foresight, was calm. Instead of the planned botanical garden, the 200 invited guests, many unaware of the drama that had unfolded, arrived at a much different, empty lot, the address having been secretly swapped by Sarah's mother on some of the invitations. The original venue was indeed deserted, a silent testament to her mother's malice. About 200 people milled around, confused, checking their phones, calling each other. Among them, conspicuous in her expensive outfit and self-satisfied smirk, was Sarah's mother. She moved through the crowd, feigning concern, subtly spreading rumors about how Sarah just can't get anything right and Mark probably got cold feet. What her mother didn't know was that a carefully curated, smaller list of 708 UE close friends and family had received a different updated location from Chloe. These were the people who truly mattered, the ones who had loved and supported Sarah and Mark without condition, and among them, Chloe had made sure Sarah's mother's sister, Aunt Carol, not the bridge club one, but a genuinely caring aunt, was included. Aunt Carol, aware of the mother's past behavior, had been quietly alerted by Chloe to the contingency plan. As the confused crowd at the empty lot grew restless, Chloe, with Mark's discreet help, ensured a few key people, including Aunt Carol, got a subtle message: head to Cho's backup venue address. It's starting soon. A slow trickle of genuinely concerned guests began to leave the empty lot, guided by Aunt Carol. Meanwhile, at Chloe's beautifully decorated community garden, a scene of quiet joy unfolded. It was smaller, yes, but intimate, overflowing with genuine love. But intimate, overflowing with genuine love. The flowers were gorgeous, the catering delicious, the atmosphere electric. Sarah, radiant in her dress, walked down the aisle to Mark, who stood there, tears in his eyes. It was perfect. They exchanged vows, surrounded by the people who truly loved them, their faces shining with happiness and relief. Midway through the reception, a figure appeared at the entrance of the garden hall. It was Sarah's mother. Chloe had specifically ensured her that she would eventually be tipped off to the real location, though not in time to cause any more trouble. Her mother stood there, her jaw slack, eyes wide with disbelief. She had expected to see a ruined bride, a humiliated fiancé, a crowd of disappointed guests. Instead, she saw a joyous celebration, a beautiful wedding, and her daughter happier than she had ever seen her. The crowd, already aware of her actions through hushed whispers and Chloe's strategic information dissemination, fell silent, watching her. Sarah's mother took in the scene. The happy couple, the dancing guests, the beautiful setup. Her eyes darted from face to face, searching for a sign of the chaos she had intended, but there was none. Just pure, unadulterated bliss. She had been outmaneuvered, her cruel plot utterly thwarted. She tried to speak, but no words came out. She was completely speechless, her face a mask of shock and, I dare say, utter defeat. She realized in that moment that she had lost, not just the wedding, but Sarah, perhaps forever. Then Mark, ever the protector, stepped forward. He walked calmly towards Sarah's mother, his arm wrapped around Sarah's waist, pulling her close. His voice was firm yet controlled. "Thank you for coming," he said, the words cutting through the silence. "We understand you went to great lengths to try and stop this day, but as you can see, love wins." He then gently but definitively guided her to a side door, a silent but unambiguous expulsion. She left without a word, a ghost of her former self, utterly humiliated. The rest of the wedding was pure magic. The guests cheered, a collective sigh of relief and triumph filling the air. Legal consequences, Sarah and Mark didn't pursue any, not wanting to overshadow their new life with more drama. The emotional consequences, however, were profound. Sarah finally severed ties with her mother. The deep-seated need for her approval, the yearning for her love, had finally died that day, replaced by a fierce sense of self-respect and the unwavering support of Mark and Chloe. This brings us to our final psychological deep dive, the mother's reaction or lack thereof when confronted with the undeniable failure of her plan, points to the stark reality of narcissistic behavior. When a narcissist's grandiosity is challenged and their attempts at manipulation or control are exposed and fail, it can trigger what's known as narcissistic injury. My This isn't just hurt feelings, it's a deep wound to their fragile ego, leading to rage, humiliation, and often an inability to process the situation because it shatters their self-perception of being all-powerful and infallible. The mother's speechless exit rather than a confrontation suggests a complete psychological shutdown in the face of her abject failure to control her daughter's narrative. For Sarah, this was not just an ending to a toxic relationship, but a powerful act of reclaiming her autonomy and her own reality. The social fallout was significant. Word spread quickly among the wider family about the mother's actions. Many who had previously been enablers or flying monkeys for her manipulative tactics finally saw her for what she was. Some offered apologies to Sarah, others simply distanced themselves from the mother. The lesson learned: love, true love, doesn't try to control. It empowers. Love and try to control. It empowers. And sometimes the most profound acts of friendship are those quietly executed, building bridges of hope when others are intent on burning them down. Sarah found her strength not in spite of her mother's actions, but in direct response to them, emboldened by the unwavering support of her husband and her extraordinary maid of honor. What a testament to resilience and to the power of a friend who truly sees you.